Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the Monday show with me, Andrew Musgrove, and him, Aaron Stokes. Newcastle United lost 1-0 to Brighton on Saturday, the first defeat in the Premier League at St James Park since January. It was a game in which they should have been 2-0 up before the opponents scored, but yet again, United failed to take their chances. We're going to look at whether it's just another one of those days at the office, put one of those chances away, and we'll be having an entirely different conversation. Or is there something deeper going on? This podcast is brought to you by NORD VPN, the only virtual private network you need to protect yourself against scammers. NORD VPN gives you the peace of mind that your devices are safe when out and about or anywhere traveling in the world. Dead simple to use. You can be signed up and protected in minutes. For less than a cup of coffee these days, NORD VPN offers a subscription that will keep you safe. And what I absolutely love about it, other than the great protection it offers, is that one NordVPN account can be used on up to 10 devices, so you are well protected on everything that you use. That's online safety at its very best. To get the best discount offer your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/tune. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description. Do click on it, get protected. Now let's get on with the show. Aaron, you well?
Yeah, very well. Are you looking forward to this podcast, or are you looking forward to being back in the room? Because I was looking forward to this show, but after Saturday, I'm now sort of changed my mind, and that's not because I'm back with you for the first time in a couple of weeks. It's not because you're a little bit fluey over there, and I might just need to stay away. But I just think we're going to talk about a game that should have been on Saturday. We should be talking about a win or at least a draw. We're not. We're going to talk about defeat and what went wrong.
I'm just happy to be out of the house.
Yeah,
to be quite honest. After a week of illness, which I thought I was through the worst of it, but it's come back with an absolute passion. Well, not a passion, it's come back with a vengeance this morning. So I've got a bit of a blocked up nose. But yes, I'm glad to be back in the studio with you. I don't know if you were aware of what happened on Saturday, but I managed to go the full day without seeing any of the Premier League scores.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I wasn't
aware
aware
of
of
entire
that.
day.
What, and then watch that match of the day?
Yeah, and
I
just
used to
my
love
luck,
doing that.
it was the last one
Yeah.
of the entire night, and I just could not believe my luck. But it was great to actually go through the entire programme not knowing what the scores was. I mean, obviously, when Bournemouth Arsenal's the first pick, I was like, well, this has just been televised, so it must be a great game. And what a great result for Bournemouth. And you go on, you see Brentford lose at Manchester United, unfortunately, and plenty of other results. Then you get to Brighton, Newcastle, and think, well, it's either going to be a boring 0-0. Obviously, then Welbeck scores, and you think, oh, they're not going to pick this up, are they? So, yeah, it was a bit like the Likely Lads, the Ant and Deck remake, when they tried to avoid the scores, and I wasn't driving as dangerously as that. But yeah, that was my little experiment for Saturday, because illness got hold of the household and I had to miss the match, which I was a little bit gutted about, but it didn't appear that I missed too much.
You didn't miss too much in terms of goals. You missed a lot of Newcastle United chances, as I'm sure you saw on Match of the Day. There was an abundance of them. But yeah, look, it's a game that probably will live long in the memory because as time goes on, I think we'll look back at it as maybe a real opportunity missed for Newcastle. And if they don't manage to turn their form around again in some tricky fixtures, we will probably look back at this game and thinking, you know what, they really could have done with winning. And they had chances to win it. Very, very sloppy, the goal they conceded. And then it was just one of those days where I think they could have been there for another 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and they probably wouldn't have scored.
But having watched the majority of the game now, I actually come into this studio in relatively high spirits because they're creating chances, they're not taking them. And I'd rather be in that position where they're missing chances rather than just not doing anything at all. And you just think on another day, they're 2-0 up before Welbeck even gets through on goal. And I think when Isak gets more minutes under his belt, when he gets maybe 2 or 3 games down the line, I know we're coming into November and people will be saying, well, when is it going to click? When are Newcastle United going to be, a force to be reckoned with? I don't know is the answer, but I am seeing enough in the game against Everton and in the game against Brighton to just be a little bit positive about what's to come, in the next few weeks and months.
Yeah, I've just got to laugh because, remember at the very start of the season when week after week we were saying, fans were saying, imagine what they're going to be like when they start playing well. And they've started playing well and they've picked up 2 points from a possible 12. So, it just goes to show that the performances have massively turned around. I actually think Saturday was up there with the best performance of the season. I think the opening half an hour before Danny Welbeck scored was probably the best they've played all season for a period.
But is that the issue, that it was 35 minutes of brilliance, and then the rest of the game there was 2 or 3 other chances, but it didn't quite...
No, because the 35-minute period, the half an hour to the 40 minutes was the best period I've seen them play. But I think they were always on top. They created just as many chances in the second half as they did in the first. They were constantly on top. Brighton only really started getting a real sight of Nick Pope's goal towards the end, when Eddie Howe had made a lot of changes, legs were tiring, and Newcastle were really sort of stretched chasing the game. I think on the whole, it was a really good performance. Others will naturally disagree because of the result, but I actually think Newcastle in isolation performed really well. They created a lot of clear-cut chances, and I think the Alexander Isak of old scores 2 or 3 goals on Saturday. I think Anthony Gordon on another day would have had 1 or 2 himself. But yeah, as I say, just one of those days where they couldn't hit the target. But there's a deeper problem there because, 438 minutes now since Newcastle have scored from open play. The last 2 goals have been from the penalty spot. There's issues there to iron out, and that's issues we're going to talk about, I know, but that front three still not clicking at the minute for some reason.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a moment. But you mentioned there Alexander Isak, because there's been a lot of talk about him over the weekend, following on from that game with Brighton. People saying, well, he's out of form. And while what went before his injury wasn't great, he hadn't been the Isak of old, you can't blame him for being a little bit off on Saturday. He's not going to be sharp in the mind. He's not going to be sharp with the ball at his feet, because he's been missing for the best part of a month. And in an ideal world, you would not be throwing him straight back into the action. You would ease him in. In an ideal world, what you would actually have is a striker who's maybe scored 2, 3 goals in the time Isak's been out, and Eddie Howe's got to go to him, look, if you hadn't been injured, you'd probably still be my number 1. But right now, he's doing the business, and you're not going to walk straight back into this side. And the very fact that a half-fit Alexander Isak can walk back into this side shows you the lack of options Eddie Howe actually has. But I do think the Swede deserves to be cut some slack, because, yeah, okay, he should have had 2, maybe 3 goals on Saturday. Yeah, but he shouldn't be playing. He shouldn't be playing, really.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can talk about all the problems that have emerged in the last 2 or 3 games and what happened on Saturday, but again, and I don't want to be sat in this position because we're nearly at the end of October. We shouldn't be looking back at the summer, but you have to look back at the summer. And again, their lack of activity in the summer has came back to bite them. It's biting them with Gordon. It's biting them with with that winger situation, and again, it's biting them with what they do with Alexander Isak. Because you're right in what you say. Alexander Isak, Eddie Howe clearly thought he was fit enough to start through the middle instead of Gordon, but
I don't necessarily think that is what Eddie Howe thought, and he's never going to admit it. I just think anyhow I'd had no other options. He's seen Gordon play through the middle, and he's seen what everyone else has seen, a Gordon who is down 2 or 3 levels when he's not playing out on the left. He's got an Alexander Isak who's half fit probably at best.
What are you judging that on? Is that just a hunch?
That's just my opinion.
But Alexander Isak played 90 minutes on Saturday.
Yeah, but
Eddie Howe wouldn't have risked him if he wasn't able to play 90
But in an
minutes.
ideal world, what I'm saying is Eddie Howe wouldn't be put in that position, right?
Yeah,
there's no way
exactly
you would
what
want your striker coming back.
Yeah, that's again is where the failure goes back to the summer. And it's easy to sit here in hindsight because we were all bigging up Mark A coming in, but you've just got to look in the cold light of day now with how well Dan Burn is playing. By the way, there's an argument for him to be player of the season. Again, it just goes back to that point: was a centre back the priority in the summer, or did they need to go out and sign another right winger or striker? And I think with each passing week, it's becoming more the case of that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about those transfers. I mean, we'll quickly just walk through Isak's chances. He fires one which hits Murphy. Good work down the left from Gordon and Lewis Hall. Arguably his best chance was the one that came from a wonderful Bruno pass through the middle. Great work between Tonali and the Brazilian. And then Isak just fires at the keeper. And again, I think a more focused and sharper Alexander Isak, which we'll probably see hopefully in 3-4 weeks' time, puts that to bed without even thinking about it. It's in the back of the net. And in the second half, he forces another good save from the goalkeeper. But again, I'll go back to what I said 5 minutes ago, I'm just encouraged by the fact that they're creating these chances. Again, a half fit Alexander Isak is getting on the end of them, and we just need him to get up to speed. Whether it's going to be as easy as that, because he's going to have to play against Chelsea, he's going to have to play in the Cup, he's going to have to play against Arsenal when he's not necessarily at his best. Again, in an ideal world, you'd want him to ease him in, but he hasn't got those options.
Well,
but I am confident that the goals will come.
He might have options. I mean, I know Callum Wilson wasn't involved on Saturday, but the signs from Howe is that he's close. I mean, how many times have we heard that? For those listening on your audio provider, Andrew sat in the studio shaking his head at me right now.
I don't want to talk about Callum Wilson, to be quite honest, because he's just going to end up breaking my heart again, isn't he? He'll come back, he'll grab a couple of goals, and we'll get to December,
and he'll be injured right before the January window.
Well, this is one of the options. This is what I want to talk to you about, actually, and I was going to bring it up later in the show.
Let's just get stuck in it right now.
But I saw this kind of touted on social media. I thought it's quite an interesting point. If you're Newcastle United and Callum Wilson is fit, he's training well, and he's not picking up any injuries, and we're getting closer and closer to the January transfer window, is there an argument from certain quarters, maybe the business side of the football club, to say, let's not risk him. Let's keep him away from first team action, so that when we can put him up for sale in January, we're not putting a crocked up Callum Wilson for sale. We're putting up someone we're saying he's ready to go. Because I just fear that you risk him between now and January, you're not going to be able to sell him because he's going to have picked up an injury. Or
is that your school of thought?
I'm kind of,
because I don't want to dig you out, but I'm going to.
Okay, I'm kind of in between. I'm kind of in between what you would do. I can see the logic on one hand, because I do genuinely think, unfortunately, he will pick up another injury as soon as he's back. So do Newcastle United just try and protect the asset and then move him on? I would accept £6 or £10 million and just say, thank you very much. You've been great. It's been a shame it hasn't worked out as well as we'd hoped. But, let's get as much money from as we possibly can.
But, 90 seconds ago, were you not just saying that Alexander Isak's been running at the ground, having to play every game? So,
yeah, but Callum Wilson's going to be in the same position when he comes back, though, isn't he? So it's not like Callum Wilson's going to come back in 2 weeks' time and we say to Alexander Isak, oh, you just take it easy, maybe, because in an ideal world, again, you would bed Callum Wilson back in. So it's one of those. And I think, to be quite honest,
I don't think you can. I personally don't think you can have a proven Premier League striker fit and ready, and you're saying, actually, we're just not going to play him because we might not be able to sell him in January. Especially when they've got such limited options, and we've just spent the last 5 minutes talking about how Alexander Isak needs competition and needs backup. It's not going to happen. And Eddie Howe's certainly not going to do it, especially given how much he trusts and rates Callum Wilson. I understand your point. I'm not like, I do get why you're making it, and I think there will be a lot of people listening and watching to this that say, yeah, you just need to make sure Callum Wilson is fit in January because it's time to go. I don't think Eddie Howe will do that. But look, I mean, we've heard Callum Wilson's close. He's training well, according to Eddie Howe. He wasn't fit enough for even the bench on Saturday, so who knows when we'll see him. If we'll see him, I don't know.
I agree with you. I don't think Eddie Howe would do that. But I think it's one that I'll be certainly interested to know your comments if you're watching live on YouTube. But I do think the whole Alexander Isak situation, having to play him on Saturday against Brighton when he's just come back from injury, other elements like Jacob Murphy on the flank, Miggy later off the bench, it just reaffirms, as you said, how damaging not just the summer window, but the window before that has been for Newcastle United, and really not giving Eddie Howe the options to freshen things up.
Yeah, as you said, it's not just the summer that they struggled. They obviously had January where they only brought in Alfie Harrison as a youth buy. So I've seen a lot of criticism on social media in the last couple of days for the substitutions. And actually, I looked at the bench on Saturday and thought, okay, another strong bench. You had Joe Willock on there, Sean Longstaff, Miguel Almiron, Harvey Barnes, William Osula, the 5 substitutes that did come on. That is a strong enough bench.
But for what? For what? Is that a strong enough bench to qualify?
Well, no. It's not. But I think for a game like Brighton at home, I was looking at that bench thinking, okay, Eddie Howe's got options there to change the game. He tried to change the game. He held his hand to it full time and said, look, the subs didn't have the impact. I wasn't too bothered about the subs in real time but the performances of the players when they came on were not good enough. Miguel Almiron did not do enough. Joe Willock was really poor. Harvey Barnes, far too quiet. So again, it just goes back to, as you've just touched on there, is this squad top 4 ready? No, definitely not. But there's options there, but those options aren't performing.
It goes back to the point that Eddie Howe and his squads, it's got a little bit stale because they've not brought anyone in, not just the ability to improve the squad with the talent that these new players would have, but also just everyone loves a fresh face. It will impact the dressing room when you go 2 windows of not bringing a real star name in or a player with real ability. And I do wonder how Eddie Howe freshens it up from now to January, because you can't bring anyone else in. So what does he do?
I mean, what options does he have? Do you drop someone like Sandro Tonali out of the team or Joe Litton out of the team? I don't think those moves would prove popular. I mean, there was a smattering of boos when Tonali got took off on Saturday. Do you then experiment with Lewis Hall and Lloyd Kelly? No, because actually Lewis Hall looks like he's coming into his own. He doesn't have the option for the minute anyway of replacing Tino Livramento or Kieran Trippier. You can't drop Fabian Schär or Dan Burn or Nick Pope. The only real place you can maybe tinker and get away with it is your front 3. But I think there's real issues with that front 3 at the minute, because I think Anthony Gordon enjoyed one of his best performances on Saturday. Back on the left, looked up for it, looked natural. He was picking the ball up deep, sometimes in the opposition half, sometimes very deep in Brighton's half, and just running, getting to the byline and making things happen. And then Harvey Barnes comes on and he's out to the right. He's out to the right, and he's not impacting the game. So there's issues with that front 3. Harvey Barnes again finding himself benched. Which
what do you do with Harvey Barnes? Because obviously he comes off the bench, and we know he's much more, well, he is at home on the left, but so is Anthony Gordon. What's tend to happen is Gordon goes to the right, he then becomes less effective, and you read that, and it's a very simplistic way to put it, but you read that as Harvey Barnes in the mind of Eddie Howe has the pick of the left when both players are on the pitch, when many would argue that actually Anthony Gordon is the better player of both of them. I still think Harvey Barnes is going to do very well at Newcastle United and prove the doubters wrong. But does there come a point where maybe that has to shift and Eddie Howe has to say, well, actually, Anthony Gordon looks much better at this point in time out on the left, and it's either Harvey's going to go on the right,
which
or just doesn't come off the bench.
Well, I mean, Eddie Howe, if he hasn't done it now, I can't see him changing that and putting Barnes on the right. Harvey Barnes has hardly ever played there, not just at Newcastle, but during his career. He never, ever plays out on the right. Howe, until January at least, has got 2 options. He does what he does on Saturday, and he starts Anthony Gordon on the left and Jacob Murphy or Almiron on the right, and Harvey Barnes is a sub player to try and impact the game. Or he goes back to what he's done the last couple of weeks, and he starts Barnes on the left, he moves Gordon out to the right, and he has Isak through the middle. Now, I think doing that is a huge risk, because you are moving one of your best attacking players away from the position that he's most potent in. And it's just, again, it's laughable that we're sat here talking about how they've got 2 really good left wingers fighting for the same position, and they still haven't addressed that problem on the other wing, because it would save a lot of headaches. I don't know. I feel for Harvey Barnes, but at the same time, I think that purple, it wasn't even a purple patch, that little run of form that he had at the start of the season is very, very quickly, that credit that he built up is very quickly running out. You actually look at his numbers, he's only scored 3 times in 10 games this season, 1 assist. I don't think
top scorer though, isn't he?
I don't think he's done enough at this point to warrant a start and to warrant moving Gordon out from the left.
Could there be some sort of formation change maybe where you get them both in the team? I mean, let's just have a quick thing off the top of our heads. Maybe where it's not going to go down well, but you drop one of the midfield 3 and you put number 10. You're playing behind Isak potentially, and then you can have Barnes out on the left and Murphy on the right.
You have Gordon out on the left side of the midfield 3 along with Barnes. But I mean, I don't know. You're still moving Gordon out of his best position.
Well, I suppose the question is what's more important? Is it that midfield 3 working together, or is it the getting Gordon and Barnes working together? What's going to be more effective for Newcastle going forward and winning games and getting those results? You would say the midfield three, probably, wouldn't
you'd
you?
say the midfield three, I think. Yeah, the midfield three. But is there not questions to be asked about the midfield three?
Well, there is, and we will get onto that in a moment. I'm just going to dive into the comments. Brian says, I like Barnes, but why sign him when we already had Gordon to play out on the left? Should that money not be invested on a right winger instead? Davey says, our bench is a lot better than it was last season, but they are not performing when they come on. Willock is just a mystery. We've got Connor Fraser says options are formation changes, youth changes, for example, Miley. And John says, should Eddie be getting more out of the squad as it currently stands, do you think, Aaron?
Maybe, yes. He should, because it's a talented group. But, you could argue if they'd beaten Brighton, they would have gone up to 5th. They would have only had one defeat all season. Is it really that bad? I think he's getting enough out of them. And the performances have definitely improved the last 4 games, which was what everyone was calling for at the start of the season when they were really struggling to put together decent performances despite getting the results. But yeah, look, of course he can get out of them. I mean, there's a clip doing the round on social media this morning of a game that happened exactly a year ago today when Newcastle beat Palace 4-0. And the clip that I've seen doing the round, it looks night and day to what the Newcastle is now. And you look at the bodies they had in the box this time last year, the runs they were making, the energy they had, just the clinical nature in front of goal. Something is just not there that was there last season.
But again, that comes from buying in new players and bringing that fresh faces, fresh blood into the dressing room. And players will be looking around, and there will be that lack of kind of drive and push to go to the next level, because not only do you want to see a sign of ambition when you're signing players, but also it's always good to be pushed by new players coming in. We've got a question here from John. He says, I do worry Howe doesn't seem to have a plan B. Do you think he should try 4-2-3-1 with Tino, Cher, Burnhall, Bruno, Tonali, Murphy, Gordon, Bones, and Isak?
Hang on, say that team again. You ran through it
So
fast.
Tino at right back, Cher at centre back alongside Burnhall at left back, Bruno, Tonali, so he's dropping Joe Linton from the middle, Murphy on one flank, Gordon on the other, Barnes in the middle, and then Isak up top by himself.
If I'm completely honest, and I don't want to dodge the question, but it sort of feels redundant talking about it, because how often have we spoken about this? Oh, his 4-3-3 dead. Oh, maybe Eddie Howe should change it. He never does. He never, ever, ever reverts from that 4-3-3.
The fact we're sitting here, though, talking about the fact that Newcastle United should have won that game on Saturday because of the amount of chances they created, is there an argument to say, well, actually, the formation is working?
Yeah.
What's missing, like it was against Everton and like it was against Brighton on Saturday, is just the ball in the back of the net. And you can't really compensate that. I mean, I saw someone say over the weekend, Eddie Howe's coached a 5-0 win there. He can't do anything once the players step over the line. I mean, is that something you agree on?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know how well 20 minutes into this podcast, and it feels like we're talking about a very, very negative performance. It wasn't. It was a good show, and the players played well. The only thing that was lacking was, 1, the finishing and taking the chances. 2, they maybe could have chased the game a bit better. I don't think they were helped by quite a subdued atmosphere at St James's Park on Saturday. But it just goes back to what I said a minute ago. The first 4 or 5 games of the season, we were sat here going, oh, well, weren't they lucky on Saturday? They might have got the win, but they need to improve their performance. They've massively improved their performance from City onwards. Well, ever since they got beat off Fulham, their Premier League performances have been much better. It's just that, we had that very poor finishing performance at Everton, and now we've backed that up with a very poor finishing performance at Brighton. So the performances are good. It's just that small issue that's starting to creep in now about the goals from open play, Isak's form, Isak's fitness, what you do with Gordon. Yes, it was a good performance, but there's definitely issues there, bubbling away under the surface.
Stephen says, can we not try an attacking three of Isak, Gordon, and Willock? Not the first person to suggest that I've seen over the
Willock
weekend.
on the left.
Willock on the right, I think. was what I've seen over the weekend being suggested. That people aren't feeling he's quite that box-to-box midfielder. He's much better.
I think he's. I mean, moving him on the right would be a big leap. I think if you're going to move him anyway, you'd put him on the left of the three. But again, is Eddie Howe going to do it? I think more likely out of those three, he would put Jolton on the left of the three and put Willock in midfield if he was going to do that, I think.
Just going back to the January transfer window, because it's a really interesting one. It's just going to continue to pick up as we head into the new year. I was reading a story in the Eye over the weekend regarding Fulham and their summer recruitment, and specifically Emil Smith-Rowe and Hakeem Anderson, two players who I think would instantly improve this Newcastle United team. Now, to put it kind of quickly, according to this story, there was an acceptance by Fulham that Arsenal and Palace were asking too much for Smith-Rowe and for Hakeem Anderson. But Fulham's owner, Shahid Khan, reportedly threw caution to the wind and said if Marco Silva, who is the Fulham boss, wants them, we'll pay it. They got their men. Is there an argument that maybe Newcastle were a little bit too cautious in the summer? I know they were trying to adhere to the PSR rules that just come out from that June deadline, and they would obviously that was still in the back of the mind. They'd had to sell Minter, they had to sell Anderson. You know, but we've got one owner there going, right, we back the manager, we'll pay it a little bit over the top, but we're going to get the players. Whereas Newcastle, you know, they didn't want to pay what Palace were asking. It might look now, in hindsight, actually a really good thing they didn't get it. But, you know, Newcastle didn't end up getting anyone in the summer. So were they too cautious?
I think sat here now we can say yes, they were, because we're seeing the effects of that cautious nature now because it's affecting them on the pitch. But then I think if you spoke to somebody inside St James's Park and said to them, come on, admit you are far too cautious, and someone will say, well, hang on a minute. We just came out from a very, very tense period with PSR. We had to sell two of our best players. The one thing we didn't want to do was then overpay and get ourselves in a tricky situation further down the line. But I do think we're too cautious. And look, take Mark Gay out of the equation, whether it's worked out or it hasn't. I think, again, it just comes back to that point that the only position that has not been improved since the 2021 takeover with a new addition is right wing.
Why didn't they deviate, you think, in the summer? Because we look back now and we think, okay, we might applaud them for not spending £70 million on Mark Gay. He's looked nowhere near that price tag. But as you say, the right wings needed improvement for a very long time. Anyone could have seen the Wilson-Isak situation coming a mile off. And you might argue as well that they haven't maybe got that number 6, although, again, you know, that argument can go back and forth. Why did they stick to that one target?
Look, I think we know that Mark Gay, he was Eddie Howe's main target, and we know that he would have taken a big chunk of the budget. So I can understand why they were looking at him for so long. I mean, they definitely stayed at the table longer than I think any of us would have, even though, you know, we've got the luxury of not being in those negotiations and looking at it from the outside. But again, I can't really wrap my head around the fact that nobody at the club looked at that team, and this is no disrespect to Jacob Murphy and Miguel Aaron, and said, you know, if we want to be a top 4 club again, you know, we really do need an out-and-out goal-scoring right winger. Now, they definitely did look at players. There was a long list that they looked at. You know, they made it very publicly clear that they wanted Michael Elise when it was maybe too late. They definitely looked at right-wing options, but why it wasn't, revisited late in the window, I really don't know.
We got Eric saying there's a lot to lament, but we just haven't been finishing our chances. If we finished like we did last year, we've had 46 more points, right near the top of the table. Clayton says formation change needed. 4-3-3 has gone still. And Graham says, I've no doubt the players are very fit, but they're just not as sharp as they were, particularly in front of goal. What has changed? Do you agree?
Well, look, they're definitely not looking as sharp as they are in goal, but Anthony Gordon being moved pillar to post can't help. Alexander Isak's the really worrying one for me, because even before the toe injury, he really didn't look himself. But then he went away with Sweden and he looked like the Alexander Isak of old when he was playing next to Victor Gyökeres, and had a really good first international break. And then, you know, everyone thought, okay, he's going to kick on now, and he didn't. So that's the main concern for me is Isak's form, because as we touched on, 4 or 5 or 6 chances that he had on Saturday, he would have buried a couple of them last season, especially that one-on-one with Verbruggen after that really good move. So Is he playing too much? Is it the Wilson Asula not being there to back him up issue? Is he just going through a bad period of form? Has he played too much football? I don't know.
Were we getting those chances though before the injury? Because to my mind, I felt like we were coming in most Mondays and saying he's not getting the service that he needs.
Yeah, and it wasn't just that he wasn't getting the service. His overall game had just really, really taken a dip. I mean, he was really struggling when he was coming deep and holding it. The ball was bouncing off him when he was trying to control it and take a touch, maybe around the edge of the box. Much better performance from him on Saturday on the whole. And Eddie Howe was full of praise from afterwards because he did good. It was just such an uncharacteristic performance in terms of finishing those chances.
And we have to hope the next time he gets one, he does put it in the back of the net. We've got Graham saying the squad is still, all squads need that freshen up, and we have too many still here, and some from the championship squad, meaning a few players are too comfortable. Got one person saying, Gay, price tag was a joke. Good, we didn't pay that, but we should have had a couple of plates spinning. Davey says, I'm still hoping Gay comes in, better than what we have, in my opinion. England's best centre-half with Stones. And
well, I'd just like to put that question back to you. Knowing how well Dan Burn started the season, in fact, Fabian Schär hasn't put a foot wrong. Sven Botman coming back.
I'm going to argue.
Is Mark Gay still the signing that Newcastle need to make in January? Next window?
I think the way Newcastle United work, if there's a chance to get him for 30-40 million pounds, I think they'll go for it.
Here's the option that I'm going to put here. 40 million on Gay, no right winger. 40 million right winger, no Mark Gay.
It's got to be right winger for me. But interestingly, you say Fabian Schär hasn't put a foot wrong. I don't.
Apart from Danny Welbeck's goal on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't agree with you. And it's not just Saturday. I think those errors that he's managed to eradicate under Eddie Howe are starting to creep in a little bit. He's starting he's starting to become a little bit hesitant. His judgment is a little bit off. And he's out of contract, and obviously he'll be wanting a new deal. I don't think it's a cert that he gets a new deal in the summer. And
really?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the centre-back pairing, and obviously when Botman comes back in, they're not going to play two left-sided centre-backs, but Dan Burn will find himself very harshly dropped because Botman's the better centre-back.
He'd be moved back to left-back anyway.
Yeah, I hope not, because Lewis has been fantastic. But I look at Fabian Schär and think, yeah, I think he's got to step it up. He's got to rediscover what made him so brilliant last season and the season before that. And we've got people in the comments as well, even before you mentioned it, they're saying there's a little bit of worry about Fabian Schär.
I'm surprised by that because I feel like I've been watching a different football at you in the last couple of weeks. I haven't noticed a notable drop-off. He was poor for the goal on Saturday, but apart from that, I thought the defence, until the last 10 minutes, were really, really assured, which was another big positive of Saturday.
He was at fault for one of the goals at Fulham when he backed off him and theirs. And obviously on Saturday, when you haven't really got that pace, you are just on a hide to nothing there because you've got to be tight. You've got to be right up close to them and not give them a moment's freedom. And he just doesn't do that. He just allows Danny Welbeck too much time, and it was not good defending. Yeah, I don't think he's at the level which we know he can be at. And look, all players go through bad runs of form, and I'm no doubt he'll pick it back up. But I'm not looking at Fabian Schär right now and thinking, get that man a new deal.
I mean, back on the Gay Schär point, I think I agree with you that if it was just those two options that I put to you for January, I would take the right wing option. But we do know Newcastle need to go out and sign a long-term partner for Botman anyway. Whether Fabian Schär was player of the season or not, he's getting no younger, and they do need to address it either in the next window or in the summer.
Well, let's see if he gets a new deal.
He will get a new deal.
I think that he probably will go back in January at a reduced offer as well, because it looks like he's not going to sign a new contract, Mark Gay. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, the goal itself, a long ball through by Lewis Dunk. As I said, Schär just allows Welbeck the time to bring it down. Little 1-2. And then Livramento. I mean, first of all, no one follows Welbeck into the box, which is a little bit frustrating. Then Livramento is already trying to make up ground. He's just too weak. Welbeck just shrugs him off, and it's a nice little finish from Welbeck. I said on the match preview I was fearing Danny Welbeck. And I was sadly proved right. He just looks like a man who just cannot stop scoring. But should Livramento do a little bit better and get across them?
Oh, absolutely, you should. Yeah, the defending as a whole, I thought was really poor. Newcastle gave away a really silly free kick at the other end. Lewis Dunk very cleverly takes it quickly. Fabian Schär should get closer. You could arguably say that Dan Burn should be closer to Rutter. And then Livramento is far too weak in the challenge when Schär just lets Welbeck run. So really poor from a Newcastle point of view. And what was even more frustrating at that point is I think Welbeck's goal was the second or third touch that Brighton had in Newcastle's box. It was so against the run of play. It was unbelievable. And Eddie Howe will really, really be ruining that lapse in concentration given how Newcastle dominated the other 90% of the match.
Someone point out as well that Dan Burn was practically on the halfway line for that free kick, which didn't help things. Dennis says Eddie is trying to incorporate a new sporting director and a performance coach into the system and make it work. It'll take time to get it right. Neil says, I wish folk would give over on this Gay debate. He's a good player, but centre-back was never the highest priority position to be filled. Right wing, number 6, and a backup striker all above a centre-back. In Neil's opinion, Howe is blinkered.
In what, in terms of his transfer strategy?
I believe that's what he's getting at.
I don't really look. They need a right winger first and foremost. I wish I had £1 for every time I said it. But they need another centre back, definitely. Whether it's January or in the summer, definitely I'll stick by that. You could say, if you maybe want to subscribe to your chain of thought, they need a 6, but I'm not convinced because I think Howe drop out of that midfield week in, week out. I don't think any of those 3 are going to be happy to sit and warm the bench. So you risk losing one of them. But I think they need a centre-half. I think that's so far up the priority list, just not as high as a right winger.
I still think 6 is really important. I get the point about, Tonali, Bruno, and Joelinton. Who do you drop? Whoever goes out the team isn't going to be happy to sit and not play. But I fear against Chelsea and against Arsenal, what you will see are those issues with the space between the midfield 3 and the back 4. They will come to the surface again the next 2 Premier League games.
It's been much better the last couple of weeks ago
against City
because that midfield 3 and the gaps they were leaving and how they were getting overrun at the start of the season was really concerning, especially at Fulham. But the last couple of games they've been a lot better. But then other people will point, and I suspect it'll be the minority of people will point to the fact, well, they dropped Sean Longstaff out of the team, they haven't won, so.
Yeah, haven't won in those 4 games that he's not started. Is the midfield of Bruno, Joelinton and Tonali the right balance? Because if you're talking just on ability and talent-wise, the best 3 midfielders Newcastle United have got, but it doesn't always work like that, does it?
I think we're slowly starting to see the best of those 3 together. I think Bruno and Sandro close to each other really works. There was a couple of times on Saturday where they were finding passes to each other, sort of like this telepathic thing. They just knew where the other one was going to be. I think Sandro Tonali's game will really improve playing next to Bruno, and I think Bruno will also improve having someone like Sandro next to him. I think Sandro Tonali, ever since he came back, has really, really hardly put a foot wrong. You saw the reaction when he came off on Saturday. Eddie Howe says that was fatigue. He's played for Italy. I get that. But again, he had another strong game. Bruno was very, very good, creative. And Joelinton, for me, that was probably his best performance in Southampton. All over the pitch, tireless without the ball, with it. I thought that was really, really good. And I don't think you'll get the credit for that performance because of the way the game panned out. But I thought he was probably my man of the match. So I actually think that midfield 3 is actually starting to work, but you've got to persist with it.
Bruno and Joelinton right up there when it comes to the amount of duels won on Saturday. So they were very physical in the middle of the park and then really seemed to control that space. I did see one fellow journalist and YouTuber just raise the question when it comes to Tonali, whether he's getting that kind of untouchable status, a little like Bruno had last year, the year before, where he couldn't really put a foot wrong. And obviously, basically, he was saying, it was the right decision to take him off because Joelinton and Bruno were actually playing probably better.
Yeah.
Is there a case for that?
I think and this is going to sound like a dig at fans, but it's really not. But I think because we've all waited so long to see Tonali, does he maybe have that little bit extra with the fans than maybe Joelinton or Willock maybe does? Because He signed for so much money. He came with such a reputation. We haven't seen him. And actually, he's been very, very good since he came back. Look, I don't have much issue with taking him off on Saturday. I didn't really get the boos. I think you could tell he was starting to look a little bit leggy. He's played a lot of football. Newcastle were chasing the game. They needed to change things up. Bruno and Jolton, as you said, were the better of the two on Saturday. Is he maybe getting untouchable status? I don't know. I think Newcastle fans just want to see him do well, and he's playing well, so he's getting praise. I don't think he had a bad game on Saturday by any stretch of the imagination.
You mentioned that clip that's doing the rounds, Newcastle versus Crystal Palace from last year. What we saw for that Isak chance in the first half was a little bit like that. The way, as you've just mentioned, the way it just clicked together, it was seamless, and we're seeing glimpses of what this Newcastle United side can really, really be. But some will say, well, we're nearly in November. How many more times can we say, there's always the next game? Not to channel my inner Apollo Creed, but, there is no tomorrow sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it wasn't even just that first Isak chance that you touched on there. You look at a few of the chances and they were coming from a lot of different areas of the pitch. You had Gordon in the second half where it was just a long Fabian Schär ball over the top, which we've seen him do so well. You saw Isak's in the first half where it hit off Murphy, and that was Gordon's work down the left. Then obviously you had Bruno's fantastic pass through the middle. It was a very good collective team performance Saturday. There was chances being created from all over the pitch. So massive positive. But as you say, we're a quarter way into the season now. It's still not clicking. The fixtures don't get any easier. There's issues to sort out.
But positive, isn't it? There's positives from Saturday that you can take in, and hopefully. And you seem like you were right with it. You seem to be kind of subscribing to the notion that we're not too far away from seeing it click. And even though we're getting into November and it hasn't really clicked yet, Howe's not under too much pressure. It's just about keeping the faith. And you can nearly touch it. It's nearly there.
Yeah, I know I keep going back to it, and I'm sorry if people are getting bored hearing it, but I just go back to what it was like at the start of the season when they looked really, really disjointed, and the results were really papering over the cracks of how poor they were. I remember that Fulham game and how bad they were then, going into Manchester City, really, really fearful. And I look at what the team's been like the last couple of games. I mean, even Everton, which was a pretty dull 0-0. Newcastle created chances to win that game. On another day, they would have if Gordon had taken some of those chances. So the signs are there. And I mean, if I know it's a big if, but if they'd put those chances away on Saturday and they'd put those chances away against Everton, they'd be in the top four. I don't think we're in any stage where we're going to need to be close to panicking.
But I guess, again, playing devil's advocate, some would say losing to Brighton, it's pretty important because they're going to be one of the teams around Newcastle battling for Europe. And the bigger picture is as well, we can always say there's always the next game, there's still, 23, 4 games to play, whatever it is. You have got the issue. Newcastle need European football. There's no ifs or buts about it. They need European football for next season, because if they do not get it, the chances of losing one or both of Isak and Bruno go up a level. Let's be honest, we don't want to say this, but I reckon one of them probably will go in the summer regardless. I just think that could happen. Having European football makes it less likely, but if they miss out on European football, that's huge, and that's going to be playing in the back of the minds. No matter, you could ask Eddie Howe every single day until the end of the season, until we know exactly when Newcastle are finishing, and he'll never admit it, but it will be there. It will be there because it'll be aware.
Yeah, I mean, my worry is, we know PIF, who want to be number one, will be expecting Champions League football this summer. And you can argue, well, that's maybe not fair because you haven't backed Eddie Howe, but they will want top four football, European football at the very least. And I just look at the table now because of those games that I've just mentioned where Newcastle didn't win, but they should have. And I look at the fixtures coming up: Chelsea, Arsenal, West Ham, Palace, Liverpool. You're already 5 points off the top four if you don't start turning those performances into results against those. We're not even going to be at Christmas and you're going to probably be waving goodbye to top four.
How big of a month is it for Eddie Howe? You've got Chelsea in the Premier League, Arsenal Premier League. In between that, you've got Chelsea in the Cup. I mean, by the time we get to bonfire night, we're really going to kind of know just how much pressure he's under. Is he? I mean, he's not under pressure now. I don't think, there's any kind of pressure on him from inside the club. I think there's just an agreement from all parties that things need to get better. And I think everyone will be able to see the green shoots of recovery is the wrong word, but the positives are there. But if he loses to Chelsea, loses to Arsenal, he's out of the cup, do things start to look a little bit different?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, look, I think, as you said there, I don't think he's in any real danger with the club at the minute. But the pressure is always there. But I always just look back at whenever we've been in this situation with Eddie Howe, and we've been in this situation so few times with him, we always say, oh, well, you know what? Results haven't been very good and these fixtures are coming up. He always seems to find a way to just, never really go on these lengthy bad runs. The bad runs are always really, 3 or 4 games, which we've sort of had the last 3 or 4 games, 2 points from 12. So I wouldn't be surprised if Newcastle actually go and beat Chelsea and get someone at Arsenal and beat West Ham and Palace. It would just be typical Eddie Howe. So I don't think there's any pressure from the club. I hate myself for bringing this up because it really rattles me, and I don't know why I let myself get drawn in by it. But are some sections of the fan base maybe starting to not turn, but are they maybe sort of, how we've just talked about Eddie Howe being, Sandro Tonali being, nearly at that untouchable status now. Have we seen maybe the reverse with Eddie Howe, where he was untouchable and now actually, because of what happened last season, because they missed out on Europe, because he, in some people's eyes, he wanted Gay and no one else, which we don't think is true. Our fans may be saying, well, you know what, Eddie, has he taken us as far as home? I don't know. Am I just reading too much into a few on social media? I don't know, but I think it's a big month, because I think if they do get knocked out of the Carabao Cup, don't pick up anything from the next 2 or 3 Premier League games, I think that will definitely become a groundswell on social media, rightly or wrongly, because I don't think he should be under any pressure.
No, I don't think he is under any pressure. I think he's protected as well because of what happened in the summer.
Yeah.
If he'd been given the tools and we were going into November and it still hadn't clicked, then maybe it would be a different conversation. But the fact he's using the same squad that he's really had for the last couple of years protects him a little bit further than maybe it would have done had more players been brought in. And as Dennis says there, who do they get in if Eddie Howe does go is the point that many are making. We've got quite a few people actually saying the midfield need to add more goals to the game. You're talking Tonali, you're talking Bruno, you're talking Joe Linton. Harvey Barnes is the top scorer for Newcastle United, and the goals from midfield 3 specifically just are not flowing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an issue that we've raised plenty of times in this pod, not just in the last couple of weeks. And, isn't it funny that we've just spoken about all the great chances Newcastle had on Saturday to win it or to draw, and every single one of them fell to Gordon or Isak or someone in the front 3. So, yeah, it's absolutely a thing they need to improve on.
Andre says we should not have replaced Emil Kraft with Fabian Schär, in my opinion. Let Schär earn his place back and not suddenly return like that. Kraft did a fine job in the back in the 3 games he played. 1 Fulham's goal and Welbeck or Schär wasn't there. Only because we don't have a centre-back who could drive and pass forward does not mean that other factors get overlooked.
Nah, I can't agree with that. So.
Davey says, I felt Tonali was not pulling up any trees on Saturday. It's why we have subs. It's a 90-minute game. I thought young Miley should have got playing time when he's just returning from injury. So he'll be one that I think will be given a little bit of time to return to first-team action. Darren says 3 players are needed. Centre-back, right wing, and a striker. In the summer of quality to improve the team. Dennis says January is coming in. I can't wait. It'll be epic, in my opinion. Now, I don't think anyone disagrees. I think those are the 3 priority. I would maybe put number 6 in that list as well. But out of those priority positions, I mean, you can only really see one big signing in January, can't you? It's not going to be a centre back and a right winger. It's not going to be a third striker and a right winger, right? Or do you think they're saying, okay, maybe if the right players come available, then different story. But what do you think their plan is now, as opposed to who comes available in January and changes things?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you go back to the first January window of the takeover, and they literally revolutionised that squad because they had to stay up. And And obviously that was in a world where PSR wasn't as, at the forefront of your thinking. You could spend. Newcastle on this journey where they had, sort of very low outgoings before that. But then you look at the Januaries of recent windows and you look at, right, well, they signed Gordon in 23. They didn't do anything in 24. They haven't really been sort of massive spenders in January windows recently, but they have just gone 2 windows without a big signing. So you've inexcusable not to make at least one in January. Absolutely inexcusable. But then you think if they're still in touch with the top 4, do PIF say, look, get 2 big ones in, get 1 out, try balance the books and really go for it? I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Any names that spring to mind that you
Well,
think
there's
target?
a little known player at Crystal Palace. I don't know if anyone's heard of him, called Mark Gay. I suspect they might go back in for him. Well, look, I don't know. I mean, there's been so few right-wing names on the market, hasn't there, really? It's all gone quiet since the summer. When we were talking about, pretty much a different name every week in terms of who it could bring in, like some Madueke, Elise at one point, the lad from Fiorentina, Gonzalez, all that stuff that was doing the rounds, but it's just gone completely quiet because they were so sort of solely focused on Gay. The big thing about Mark Gay is can Palace tie him down to a new contract before January, and that changes the game completely. Because if they do that, Newcastle, in some sense, might be back to the drawing board because they've lost out on their number 1 defensive target.
I mean, how important is that we get into January and things move pretty quickly? I mean, if I was Eddie Howe, I'd be knocking on the door and saying, by the 1st
January,
by that FA Cup 4th round, 3rd round tie, which you assume would be the 1st or 2nd weekend, probably the 1st weekend of 4th, right? And you think about the 4th?
Yeah, I think
anyway,
it was the 6th, wasn't it?
You want that new player in as soon as possible, right? That's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, we said that over the summer, didn't we? We say it every window. Of course, he's going to. We were talking in the summer about how he wants him in before pre-season, but you've got to hope that they've learned from the summer. You've got to hope that Paul Mitchell will have had enough time to bed in, and also just from a PR point of view, if the club let January drag on like they let the summer drag on, it causes more problems for them because of how it looks from the outside and how it's perceived. So, no excuse for them not getting the business done early in January.
We got one chap here, Darren says, I'd ship Mickey out and get Sarni in. Only things was as simple as that. Just briefly, because the one thing that is popping up more than most in the comments here is about set pieces and just how bad Newcastle United are at them. I mean, they were at one time when they were absolutely brilliant. The routines were creative and they were effective. But Sean Longstaff with the final kick of the ball on Saturday, and he has a corner down at the Leazers and kicks it straight in the goalkeeper's hands. And that kind of just summed up Newcastle's use of set pieces over the weekend.
Yeah, I feel like we had this exact conversation, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago on the pod, and I feel like nothing's changed. I don't feel like Newcastle have scored from a set piece since. And also, it just seems very route one now, doesn't it? It seems hit it in the box and hope. It seems let's try and just stick it on Dan Burns' head at the back post, which was happening a lot on Saturday. Nearly came off in the first half, to be fair. But yeah, none of these routines. I mean, you see the routine that Bournemouth scored against Arsenal on Saturday. It was amazing, wasn't it? Great finish from Ryan Christie. But as you touched on, that would have been in Newcastle routine 2 or 3 seasons ago, and it was working so well. And those routines that were put together by Tyndall and Purchase and all these coaches on the training ground were so creative. And it just feels like they don't even get attempted anymore.
Why? I mean, but you know what? I'm not even all. I don't really care about the creativeness of corners. I mean, it was lovely to watch Bournemouth score the way they did. In many ways, we should just be putting the ball into the box and using the height of Dan Burn and others, because they should be scoring more goals. My issue is it doesn't even half the time doesn't even beat the first man.
Yeah, the deliveries have been poor the last couple of weeks. I mean, when you take Kieran Trippier out of the team as well, you lose that general set piece taker. Gordon's been on them and actually done quite well on them. Tonali sometimes steps on them. So I don't know, you're constantly changing that taker, aren't you? So as you say, Longstaff took the last one on Saturday. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely an issue they need to iron out, though, because, I mean, as you say, with all that height in the back line, they're really not using it.
Time to get a specialist set piece coaching.
I mean, yes, because you're looking around the league now and pretty much every big 6 team has got them. I mean, even some teams now who have throwing coaches and all that. I mean, I don't know if I subscribe that you need one of those, but is Eddie Howe looking at it and thinking, well, you know what, we've got JT and all these coaches that have done it before. We don't need them. I don't know.
Davey says, how many times do we not beat the first man from a corner, get a player in front of the defenders? Gives you another option. The other thing people are talking about, William Asula coming on in the 92nd minute. Now, there were 9 minutes of added time, so he did get a little bit of a run out. Went 2 up top, but a lot of people asking, just what was the point? Why not bring him on with 15, 20 minutes to go? If that's what your plan was, and just try and find the equaliser.
Yeah, it was a bit of an unusual. Well, not unusual to see Asula that late because we very rarely see Asula get a good chunk.
It was to see him.
Yeah, at least we saw him. As I said, I mean, going into that game, Alexander Isak starts fantastic, misses all those chances, plays 90 minutes, which I was surprised at. I was surprised that we maybe didn't see Isak taking off maybe a little bit earlier, around the time Gordon was, and maybe the subs before, maybe just giving Asula a bit of a run out. I don't know. Clearly, I mean, I feel like we talk about Asula every week and he never plays. I feel like Eddie Howe, cannot do any more to show us that he does not think the player's ready.
Yeah, maybe we should have seen a little bit more of him, but we didn't. Time now for 20 questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, let me get that.
So for those who don't know, every week me or Aaron will pick a former Newcastle United player and the other person has 20 questions to guess who it is. I got last week's, which was Jean Allen Blue's song. The week before, which was probably done in six, 7, I think it was. So let's see. I think your record is something like 12 or 13. Graham is watching, who managed to get it last time in 3. Which is quite impressive. I can't remember who it was. Actually, it was a few weeks ago.
It was Clarence Acuna.
There you go. Go on then.
Is this player British?
Yes.
I hear when they're British. So it just makes it harder for me. I prefer it when they're foreign. Is this player an attacker?
Yes.
Oh, good start. Did this player play before 2010?
Yes.
Did he play under Bobby Robson?
He did. This is number 4 now.
Yeah, I've just done 4, so this is 5. Is he a Newcastle hero? Is he
No.
No.
Not a Newcastle United hero.
Okay. So when you say that though, is that because he's hated or because he didn't play enough games to become a hero?
Didn't. Oh, yeah, yes and no.
Sorry.
You word that correctly. Yeah, I will answer it, but you cannot get around the rules. We've got a few guesses.
Was he sold by the manager after Bobby Robson? Famously.
No.
No.
Well, I mean, that's 2 questions there. Famously suggests that it was regrettable.
Was he sold by Graham Souness?
No, he wasn't actually, I don't think.
Okay.
Let me just check.
That was my guess out the window then.
No, I think Sir Bobby was still in charge when he was sold. Yeah.
Okay.
He would have been.
I was thinking it was Craig Bellamy. Right, okay. Did he play under 50 games?
Yes.
This feels very obscure.
We have
somebody got it.
No. Graham has suggested one name. It is not that Graham. It is not that person. Not going to rule anyone out for Aaron.
Did he play as a centre forward?
He did.
Not a winger.
I mean, there's not that many.
Yeah, I know. It's a striker under Bobby.
Yeah.
Did he also play for Sunderland?
No. Who's that?
Michael Bridges.
No.
Did he play for another Prem club?
He did. Michael Bridges.
Struggling here again.
Come on, you can kick yourself when you think about it.
English striker, no, British striker under Sir Bobby, not a club hero. Played under 50 games.
And think about the strikers that were around at that time. Obviously, you got Big Al, Bellamy,
Bellamy, Carl Court.
Are you gonna have a guess? Are you gonna say?
I would have a guess if I had anyone in mind. I had Belly in mind. I had Bridges, but
We have one right guess in the answers here.
played for another Prem club.
You're gonna kick yourself. Do you want me to put you out your misery?
put us out.
It's called Court.
Oh, it was called Court.
Yeah, but I couldn't take it as a guess. You didn't. You just ran.
Yeah, no, but
random bits of names.
because I didn't know Call Court was British. That's why. Oh, well, there you go. I got it then. Happy days.
Well, he was born in London, but was he? Well, who was he? Was he capped
Yeah,
for?
I'm pretty sure he captained it. Did he not captain an African country? Which is why.
Guyana.
Yeah,
so he did cap for Guyana, but he also played 14 games and scored 8 goals for England's under 21s, and he was born in the south.
So I did get it. Really, it was just your dodgy.
Well, you asked if he was English, and he is English.
So 10. That was good for me. That one.
You didn't get it right. You just started naming random people. Anyone can do that. That defeats the object. But well done to Ian, who was, I think, the first person to get it, who was also coincidentally my uncle. I promise you did not get the answer. I know Gillian was there with it as well, as was Graham. Naturally, you all got it there. 3 minutes past 3. So we'll a tie between Graham and Ian. You all got it ahead of Aaron. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. Do please click on that link in the podcast description to get the very best discount on your NORD VPN. It is well worth your money, your time, and your effort to make sure you're fully protected when out and about with your web devices. From me and Aaron, we'll see you guys next week.